Welcome to the Cyclical Doula podcast. I'm Emma, a certified Sympto-Pro instructor, a fertility awareness educator, and your guide to fertility coaching and reproductive health education from menarche to menopause and all the different types of motherhood in between. If you're seeking a natural, science-backed approach to managing your fertility, understanding your cycle, or simply connecting with your body in a new way, you're in the right place. Each episode is designed to empower you with the tools, knowledge, and confidence you need to thrive in your unique journey. Quick disclaimer, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice or individualized charting support. For specific guidance, please consult with your healthcare provider or fertility awareness instructor. Now, let's dive into today's topic.
Welcome to the space where cycles breathe, where the real raw life of a mama leads, from motherhood's highs to charting the low. Your body's story is the star of the show. Matriarch heart.
Hey, I'm so excited that you're here today on the Cyclical Doula podcast. Today, we're talking about food in a way that actually feels doable. If you're preparing for pregnancy, navigating postpartum, or just trying to feed yourself while little people reject perfectly good vegetables, this one is for you. I'm joined by Registered Dietitian Aderet, founder of Dining with Nature. She helps women nourish from fertility through family life with a gentle, body-led approach. We dig into how to notice patterns instead of obsessing over a single data point, what cycle-aware view of cravings and seasons can look like, and why the perfect plan is less powerful than a B- rhythm you can repeat. You'll hear practical ideas, think soups, sheet pan dinners, and a simple 1-week experiment to add plants to every meal, plus a family menu trick that I'm stealing immediately, the Venn-diagram method. And we poke at a few internet nutrition myths and come back to the heart of it all, connection, not perfection. All right, let's get into it. Welcome back to the Cyclical Doula podcast. I am so excited to have Aderet with me today, and we are going to be talking about nutrition in a bunch of different ways, but I'm going to let her start off by introducing herself and telling us a little bit more about who she is and what she does.
Okay. Thank you, Emma, so much for having me here. I'm really excited for today's conversation. I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Aderet. I'm a dietitian. I have a private practice, Dining with Nature. We work with women from fertility through family life. So preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, and then in the first few years of family as well. Providing kind of a holistic, more sustainable approach to nutrition care.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to share about yourself? Yeah.
Sure. So I'm from New York. And I was born and raised one of 6 kids, and just, really passionate about food and health, and kind of it's kind of set me on a path to become a dietitian, and then to kind of niche in working with families and working with women in women's health, and just and bringing my kind of passion for food to my care is kind of my big my go-to.
That's awesome. I love that. So as we're getting started today, I just want to get to know you a little bit more, have our audience get to know you a little bit more. So I've been asking all our guests this question. What is one rhythm or ritual that you swear by?
I have to say that my morning routine is is just the most important thing to me. I always say I'll wake up earlier if I have a really early day. I'll wake up earlier just so I can have my morning routine. It's just I get excited about just waking up and having my cup of coffee and sitting and being able to have this downtime before I start work and work out and everything. It's just kind of really a big part of my routine going smoothly for the day.
Okay, I love that. Is there anything specific about the routine that really makes it ideal?
I think it's just it's setting intention for the day, or kind of just not going from an alarm going off straight into checking your email, right? Kind of just
For
this
sure.
moment in between where you're okay, you're waking up, you have a really good cup of coffee, like the sun is coming up, like it's just like that's to me like the best way to like set the course for the day.
I love that. That's really good. All right. So as a dietitian and as the founder of your um company and your work, like what drew you into this work more, and like specifically with fertility and motherhood? Because I feel like obviously like there's registered dietitians out there that do all sorts of different work, but like what's the thing that really drew you to doing this specifically?
I always I grew up in a house full of women, and I always make the joke that my mom was either pregnant or breastfeeding my entire childhood. Like I don't remember like any time where that wasn't one or one or the other thing that was happening. And so it was just
Yeah.
like always I was always surrounded by it. And I have on top of that I have three sisters. And I just found that like women's health was just like it was like and women's everything was just so like ingrained in the way I grew up. And then as I got older and I like learned my passion for science and health and food and I learned about nutrition, everything just like all the pieces just like kind of came together in my mind of like I have to take all of these things and do something with them. And when I learned
Yeah.
about how to become a dietitian, I was like, that's for me. And like I always just like had this thing in the back of my head where I was like, I'm going to work with women and I'm going to support them through this amazing journey. And that's just like kind of how it all unfolded. Yeah.
I love that. So what is the like how with that, like how do you actually like support women through those stages?
Sure. So I think like first and foremost, everything is individualized. So this is just
Right.
like general, this is like general, care and like, or as a general take on the journey. But everything starts with where you at now, and like understanding, their lifestyle and habits and what's going on medically and just kind of like where you are in that fertility space and
Yeah.
preconception. And then the reason why I created this like fertility through family life like line in my mind is because I'm like it, there's just such frequent changes over such a short period of time that have a lot of nutrition implications. And so
Yeah.
being able to work with somebody from that, preconception time, and understanding everything from that point, really sets the course, able to support them through a journey of pregnancy and then postpartum and then into parenthood, that I think is like really rewarding because it's like there's just this continuity. And
Yeah.
so the way it's then that nutrition plan evolves. We take all that like pre-knowledge and evolve it through each stage, so that like your nutrition needs are being addressed based off of everything that we learn about you as you evolve through the journey.
I love that. I think that's so important. And obviously, like, it has to be so individualized to make it work
Yeah.
effectively. But I
Yeah.
think that's kind of helpful to just kind of see how that like progresses and like how it can be such an important part of somebody's health in general.
Hmm.
You had mentioned that there's this that you honor your body's cyclical nature when you're working through this. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what that looks like? You talked about like the general journey of different seasons, but do you recommend, obviously again, like I know this is totally individualized, so like disclaimer that it's not general advice to
Yeah.
everybody, but like would is there some commonalities in regards to women in with their cycles that there's recommendations around how we feed ourselves in that time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I mean, I think that women go through a lot of different versions of cycles, whether it's their menstrual
Right.
cycle or cycle, whether it's like a seasonal cycle, whether it's like a fertility cycle. And I mean, like the word cycle is like, should just be synonymous with women in my mind.
For
Um,
sure.
and so like, I like to learn what those are,
Yeah.
what those look like, what types of things come up, whether it's food cravings, whether it's specific symptoms, whether it's like it can be as simple as like, well, during the winter I eat less fruits because there's less fruits in season, and so this is something that
Right.
like I'm lacking in my diet. Or It can be I really crave chocolate before my period and it kind of gets a little out of control. Or, I think that learning those ins and outs of people's lives really helps in the like nutrition care that's provided.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And so how do you like if somebody wants to work with you or like get into this space, like how do they then or how are they able to like track that or know that there's that it's corresponding with all of those things? Like do you have a specific
Yeah.
protocol or like connecting? I know like a lot of the people who are originally going to be listening to this podcast from my side are probably coming with some of this like fertility awareness based method knowledge. So we're tracking cycles on the day-to-day basis. But
Hmm.
I wonder if that like how that could integrate with
Yeah.
what you're doing.
So, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to learn this. One, it's simply by already having the knowledge and bringing it to the table on day one, and
Right.
we kind of work through it together. Or it's working with me for an extended period of time that allows us to learn those patterns and pull them out. Sometimes, I always say with data collection, this is data collection at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
we have a tendency to get fixated on one point, like, oh, this week I dot, 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 dot. And what I'll encourage people to do is kind of zoom out and say, okay, that's one data point. Now let's get like 10 more and see what the
Yeah.
trend is and learn those patterns. And that can be done through a tracking of some kind. It can be done through journaling of some kind. It can be done just through frequent sessions. There's so many different ways to learn those patterns and through of the cycles, in the cycles, with the cycles, to collect that data and to use that data.
I love that. All right, that's great. I think that as we're talking about this, it kind of comes up the idea of like um nutrition as a whole in like diet culture versus what it seems like you're talking about in regards to like really looking at the individualized person and like supporting them through all of these different seasons of their life. Um, how how do you help women in general like find that middle ground of like wanting to maybe like feel better or lose some weight or like all of those like typical things that are around diet culture and then also like really looking at that individualized person and all of those things.
So I my first step in any conversation, especially with women, is to understand their history with their relationship
Yeah.
with food, their relationship with body, and understand where they're at now. And a lot of the beginning work might be shifting mindsets. That
Yeah.
might be a lot of the conversations. Yeah, obviously we're going to have to talk about the like, the clinical nutrition stuff that's going to be relevant to whatever your journey is. But you might come back to me in the second session and say, look, I heard everything you said and that I need to do, but here's the barrier. And sometimes that
Right.
barrier has a lot to do with relationship with food and relationship with body and requires time to work through that before any real change is made. That's a big part of why I work from fertility through family life, both in the time that it gives us to work through things,
Yeah.
but also in the space of wanting to change things for the future and future generations, being able to address things, if you can help the mother change a mindset and help them embody a different approach to food and body, that can be passed down to the next generation.
Yeah.
And so that kind of I hope answers the question of like
Yeah,
how
I
it all
think
fits
so.
in. Okay.
I think so. I think it's just like I think we're so quick, I think in general in society as women to be like, oh, especially like postpartum, like just like lose the baby weight, get back to that size or whatever. And that's not been my experience, but I know that that's been a lot of people's experience.
Yeah.
And I think that having that like mindset shift, as you were talking about, is just like, it's not just about like what are you eating, but like how you're eating and how you're approaching food is what it sounds like
Yeah.
that's coming from. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So as we're talking, is there like something about your story specifically that you want to share more about, not just your work, but like who you are as a person and who, like what really motivates you?
Sure. I it's such a general question, so like hopefully like I'm like sharing what you're looking for.
I think
But
it's anything. It can be
yeah.
anything. Whatever you feel like sharing
Um,
is good.
Sure, absolutely. So I always make the joke that I don't like calling myself a foodie because I don't know if it's like cool still to call yourself a foodie. but, um,
Yep.
but like I just love food. I love cooking. I literally the other day I just said to somebody, I said, if I had to choose between cooking and baking or eating, I would choose cooking and baking. And they're like, that's the craziest thing
Oh,
I ever heard. And
interesting.
I was like,
Okay.
look, I'm like, I love to eat, like, I love flavors and I love to learn about food. And I like to, but I kind of look at food as nourishment. That's
Okay.
how I look at food. And also like as like a science experiment. Like if I'm curious about a flavor of something or a new food, I'll try it. But I get more joy from the process of putting it together. I find it to
Okay.
be like one of those like really exciting things. And I I always like wanted to, and that just, I don't know where that developed from. I don't know where it came from. But I always just like, I find such joy in cooking and baking and then like bringing it to family and friends and like
Yeah.
providing it to others. Like that's where like I find so much joy. And so like that was such a big part of like, who I am as a person and how I kind of got here. That is just like really like, kind of encompasses, a lot. And, I think also just being a middle child of a big family and like kind of having these, I'll call them people pleasing tendencies as a
Yep.
result, like I'll make a lot of jokes to make people laugh, but also like I'm also the type of person that's like I also need to like cook and bake and like provide food. And so like I think that, my career really became like an extension of like who I am, my passions,
Yeah.
like in such a big way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that. I think that's
Okay.
so cool. And I think like what a cool thing that
Yeah.
like as the idea of like a foodie not being like often when I think about that, it's more of like eating the food and like that
Yeah.
experience of eating it. But I love that idea of just like being in the realm of like cooking it, baking and like that side of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. I
Yeah.
love that. Do you think that there is like one thing about that joy that you can like give to people as they're like going through this? I know that's like as people are learning about their bodies and like learning how to feed themselves, like do you feel like you're giving that like joy of like cooking and baking to them as well through that?
I really do try. I
Yeah.
hope. I hope I like make my love of food a little contagious, in
Yeah.
a lot of ways. I always say to my friends, like, I don't expect people to, want to, relate to food the way I do of like finding joy in cooking and baking. But I
Yeah.
do think that if I can teach people the importance of like being comfortable in the kitchen and being comfortable with this idea of preparing meals for yourself and like,
Yeah.
having like 5 to 10 meals and recipes under your belt that you're like, I can do this and it tastes good and I enjoy it, then I feel like I've succeeded in my work a lot of the times because I think a big part of what holds people back is this just kind of like general disconnect from food in general, and from
Yeah.
what we eat and where we shop and how we prepare.
Let's take a quick moment for a little brain break and talk about something different. Have you ever wished someone could just sit down with you and magically tell you when you were going to get your period next? Or maybe tell you exactly which days you can and can't get pregnant? That's the beauty of charting. Once you understand your cycle, it stops feeling like this random guessing game and starts feeling like a pattern you can actually trust. I promise it's not as complicated as it might seem. Your body is already giving you all the clues. You just need someone to show you how to read them. That's exactly what I'm doing right now while finishing my Fertility Knowledge Collective certification. I'm still looking for a few clients to work with me for 3 months of online cycle coaching and charting support. We'll meet virtually, review your real life signs like cervical mucus and temperature, and help you build skills you can use for the rest of your life. And as part of my certification process, this round is pay what you can. So if you've ever thought, I just wish someone would guide me, this is your chance. To get in touch with me, either message me on Instagram at cyclical doula or text FKC just so I know that what we're talking about to 854-220-0218. I'll send you the details and we can figure out if this is a good fit for you. Okay, let's get back into the episode. Totally. That completely makes sense. Do you think that, or like, do you have a favorite recipe or food that you've recently made or one that you like always go back to?
Um, Man, I feel like there's so many. I'm a seasonal person.
Okay.
So
Yep.
everything I cook is in seasons.
Yeah.
And like specifically love the fall season. So having this conversation right now is very apropos.
Yeah.
But like in the fall season, I really like to make pumpkin muffins. That's the thing I like to go to for my baking.
Yeah.
And also there's like a roasted cabbage recipe that I really love with like a tahini dressing on it.
God.
And so that's kind of how my brain works of like, I think in seasons and I'm already thinking about the winter season and the chili that I'm going to make, the
Nice.
mac and cheese I'm going to make and the kale salads I'm going to make. Because that's just kind of like how I roll in my head of like my favorite foods and recipes to make are very aligned with the season that I'm in. So yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. I love that. That's super cool. Yeah, I'm a good sucker for a pumpkin muffin. That's
Okay.
a good one. I love
Yeah, anything you can
that.
do with pumpkin.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of people that I've heard in my practice, when they're thinking about in regards to fertility, they're thinking about like how can they feed their bodies well in preparation for pregnancy, in that time leading up to it. And I know there's a lot of resources out there that are talking about this, but what are some things that like a woman or like as a couple they should really be working on to like obviously like again like individualize is going to be best, but like what is the things that we're supposed to be looking at if we're thinking about trying to conceive soon, um and really like being able to prepare our bodies best for that season of pregnancy?
For sure. I like to talk about the who, what, when, where, how of nutrition.
Okay.
And I always start with like the when and the how, which is the if you're given I don't know 16 hours of time that you're awake in the day, that's time for you to nourish yourself. That's time for you to get nutrients. And a big part of fertility health is being well nourished. And
Yeah.
so use your time wisely. Avoid skipping meals if you can, right? Like get the biggest bang for your buck, and be smart about how you kind of spread your meals out for the day. And that's kind of the first piece that I always like to bring in. And because, at the end of the day, it's not groundbreaking information because like you said, there's so much out there. So
Yeah.
the question really becomes, how do I get nourished enough to do what you're asking me to do, or what I'm asking my body to do for me, really?
Yeah.
And then the second piece is, making sure that when are eating, you are being focused on nourishing yourself, that you are actually making that effort. And so, there's a list of fertility friendly nutrients, I should say, that like, you'll hear about all the time, your proteins and your your fiber, your fruits and your vegetables and your iron and your vitamin D and your folate. And like, you go through all of them and you can go through all of them.
Right.
What it comes down to is diversity in the diet, making sure that you're, eating a diverse range of fruits and vegetables, that you're having like, good quality protein sources on your plate, making an effort to eat those healthy fats, olive oil, avocado, nuts, seeds, fish, salmon, fatty fish, salmon, just being, taking the time to really utilize your meals so that they are giving you a nice range of nutrients.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's sometimes I feel like it could be simpler than like somebody's like, all right, like looking at all of these very specific aspects of
Yeah.
it, that just like that idea of just like nourishing your body well is really important. Um, all right, what simple meals or nourishment rituals could support women who feel like they're just like stretched thin all of the time?
Yeah. Um, so first of all, the first thing I like to go to, especially as though it's getting colder now, so like I'm thinking
Yeah.
about hot meals, less cold meals.
Yeah.
Um, First of all, when you're stretched thin with time, meal prepping and batch cooking is your best bet.
Yeah.
So making things ahead of time, like a nice big pot of soup with a lot of different vegetables and even protein sources like meat or
Mm,
chicken, and things like I like to also suggest sheet pan meals. Those are quick and easy, right? Bunch of
yeah.
veggies roasted with like a good quality protein. Um, and then you have your easy stuff like things like a yogurt bowl, and things like a simple egg breakfast meal with like toast and whatnot. And so these simple easy meals and then also batch cooking, they go a really long way. There's a lot of
Yeah.
like great nutrition you can get from those simple meals. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that. And do you because you're focused on like through family life, how do you approach this when like people have toddlers and little kids who like maybe aren't eating all of the the different range of things that you may
Yeah.
be trying to feed yourself, but how do you approach that with them as well, because I'm assuming that's kind of connected into that
Oh
idea of
yeah.
that family life. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to talk to families about the Venn diagram.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna all overlap on everything.
Right.
But there's this middle section, right? You have mom, dad, and child, right? And there's a
Yeah.
middle section where you're going to all align on something or some things.
Yeah.
And those should be the main staples of your menu.
Hmm.
And I'll emphasize the need for a menu. And then the things that are kind of in each person's individual bubble, outside of the middle ground, that's where you won't be aligned. And so, for example, if you make a pot of soup that's full of ingredients that everybody likes, but one person likes to have rice on the side, and one person likes to have pasta on the side, and one person likes to have potatoes on the side, that's where you're going to have to, get creative in the kitchen and maybe
Yeah.
have a couple different options. But always starting with like what's sitting in the middle, right? What's sitting in the middle? What do we all agree on? What are all things that like not only do we all like, but we all need,
Yeah.
type of thing, and then kind of working from that space.
All right, that's good. I like that. I think obviously like that can get so specific
Yeah.
into that, but I think that's really
Yeah.
helpful to just kind of like think about that. I feel like sometimes our personal philosophy in our household is just like to feed the kids what we're all eating. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. And but I know that like that's not the case for every family, about what they're currently doing, but that they kind of are hoping to do. And
Hmm.
hearing that can be really helpful to just like kind of finding those things and focusing on that. I like that idea of meal planning too, having a menu specifically, you said. And is that something that you like work with people to create when you're working with people one on one?
Yes. So when I
Yeah.
work with people one on one, we'll create a menu together, um, where we'll kind of like sit and work through like what your family likes and like how to create consistency in the family.
Yeah.
So like I think a big thing that, it's like we really get caught up in this like idea of like, oh, what am I supposed to have for dinner tonight? Right? This
Yeah.
kind of like frustration of like, oh, what are we supposed to have? And I like to kind of help families create this outline, so that it's like, okay, on Tuesdays you're going to have a chicken meal type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's going to be a different chicken meal every single week, but like this is the Tuesday. And if there's this consistency and this expectation, it helps with building the menu. And on top of that, I do offer meal planning service. So that also helps with that, like, okay, but we also want to be not only addressing what we like and works for the family, but also what addresses our nutritional needs for everybody.
Right.
And so kind of combining both that like clinical and that like, I'll call it social element.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
really good. I mean, I feel like I could use that. My husband's the cook in our family, but he's a flight attendant, so he's gone for stretches at a time, and I'm always like, "All right, what do I do?" And I feel like that's really helpful. Obviously, like
Yeah.
I've kind of heard it before, but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, like if you just kind of like pick some of those ideas and narrow it
Hmm.
down, could be really helpful. Yeah. All right. What is, when we're talking about all of these things about fertility and food and family life and food, and nourishing our bodies, what's a myth that comes to mind when we're talking about this that you'd like to debunk?
Um, I think that that's actually a really good question. There's a lot of myths.
Yeah, I can.
So
You
it's like
can say a few if you want
I know it's like
to.
I don't even know which one to choose. I think the biggest thing that it's just that social media is so full of the do's and don'ts and the rules.
Mm,
It could be as simple as stop drinking coffee, don't eat gluten, all the like different, hot topics, I'll call them, or
yeah,
like
yeah,
trendy topics. And we get really caught up in them and we get frustrated because it doesn't feel applicable to us. It's like, okay, but I like coffee. And it's like, okay, but I
yeah,
like bread and I'm not experiencing any adverse effects. So, like, how true is this? And I think that, you know, I think the grand myth that I would debunk is like work with a professional. Get your
yeah,
answers, get your individualized answers. Don't assume that just because you heard it from a wellness influencer on Instagram or TikTok that it applies to you.
yeah,
I think that, my favorite thing to say is like patients will say to me things like, I want to be the type of person that eats a kale salad every day, or I want to be the type of person that wakes up at 6 a.m. and goes for a run. And then I ask the question, do you like kale? Or like, do you like running? And the answer is inevitably no. And then I go, okay,
right,
so that's just not you. So we've got to find something else because there's like a ton of fitness options and there's a ton of nutrition options out there for you.
right. Yeah, that's great. I think, yeah, man, I agreed that there's just like you can be so wrapped up in the like, all right, like this is working for somebody else, like it's gonna work for me too, and how important it is for us to really kind of discern what is the best thing for our individual bodies and also like for the life season that we're in and all of those different things, and obviously working with somebody who is trained
Yeah.
in that particular mode
Yeah.
of action of what you're trying to do is really
Yeah.
helpful. Um, what do you feel like a supportive practice around nutrition that like all of our listeners could um try this week, or kind of to dip their toes in a little bit if this is not something they're currently doing, and they don't yet have the capacity to work with somebody one-on-one?
Everyone's going to hate the simplicity of my answer, and they're going to wish it was way more interesting and way sexier than what I'm about to say. But including a fruit and or vegetable at every single one of your meals for a week straight is a game changer. Having plants at your meals is the one of the like the greatest things you can do for yourself, with the biggest bang for your buck. And I know it's not interesting, and I
Yeah.
know it's not so fun, and I know nobody wants to hear a commercial for broccoli. But if I could trade out commercials for Dunkin' Donuts for a commercial for broccoli, I would.
Awesome. I love that. And what's like in season right now? This is gonna be the week that we're recording this is also gonna
Okay,
come out. So like what's like in season in November, in we'll just say like in the US or like the
for
the
sure.
North America, just because obviously it's different everywhere.
Yeah. Fun things right now, potatoes, sweet potatoes, squash, pumpkin, leeks. All the herbs are delicious right now, like sage and rosemary. I mean, there's so much you can do. I'm like, my
Yeah.
brain is like going on the fritz. You're gonna see some citrus fruits. There's just really great stuff out there right now. And I know it's technically not growing season, but there's still some great stuff in the market right now that you should apples
Yeah.
that you should definitely be grabbing. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. I feel like that's helpful to just kind of like have some ideas of like not only eat those fruit and vegetables, but like here are the ones that are in season and maybe like a little bit better for right now too.
Yeah.
Awesome. So when you're like working with all of this, what do you hope that every woman learns about when caring for her body during these life phases? Obviously, like, that's a huge question. It might be different based on different life seasons, but what's your like general hope around all of that?
I hope that women learn that how they take care of themselves on the inside reflects on the outside.
Yeah.
like how, like if we are taking care of ourselves the best we possibly can be. I have a patient that says it's aiming for a B minus C plus in how we take care of ourselves, which I like. That's a really good grade.
Yeah.
And and if we can kind of reach that point, and feel really confident and good about how we're taking care of ourselves, it really reflects on the outside, both in like our vibe and in our physical appearance and just everything.
Yeah. That's great. Wow. Yeah. I love that.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, tell me what else like you're hoping to just share on the podcast in general, and then whatever, anything that comes to mind, and then also tell us like where we can listeners can work with you and all of that and find you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I could just leave everybody with like one last thing, it would
Yeah.
just be, like I know, I know there's a lot of nutrition noise out there, and there isn't such a, and you think you can get all your answers from Google and ChatGPT, and not often do people like seek out dietitians,
Yeah.
but there's so much to gain from getting support from a nutritionist and from a dietitian, being able to kind of work with somebody through all the seasons of life, and tackle some of the medical issues from a food standpoint and from a lifestyle standpoint can be really rewarding, and so not to skip out on an opportunity to work with somebody,
Yeah.
and that I hope that women know that they can have that support, because that is a big part of being a female. And so knowing that there is like that support out there for you, is something that I would encourage people to seek out. And then you can find me on my website, diningwithnature.com, or you can find me on Instagram at diningwithnature. I always like to hear from everybody, so please don't hesitate to DM me or shoot me a message through my website, or book a call, and we can chat further.
Awesome. That sounds so good. It's been so great talking with you. You also had shared with me that you have a newsletter that
Yeah.
that people can get on to. So we'll get those links to your website and all of those things, your one-on-one services, in the show notes as well. So people can connect with you. But when if somebody wants to connect with you, is it through your website the best way to just kind of reach out and find information about how to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Head to my website, diningwithnature.com, and really easy to navigate and find ways to get in touch with me.
Perfect. That sounds
Yeah.
great. Well, it's been such
Okay.
a joy talking with you. And I really appreciate you being on here and sharing all your wisdom with us.
All right. Thank you, Emma, so much. It was great to be here.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Cyclical Doula podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much if you shared it with a friend or posted it on Instagram and tagged me at Cyclical Doula. If you've got a question you'd love to hear answered on the show, head over to emma.com/podcast to submit it. And don't forget, leaving a quick review really helps this podcast reach more people. Plus, if you upload a screenshot of your review on my website, I'll send you a special surprise as a thank you. You'll find all the details in the show notes about this show today, and I really appreciate you being here and listening in. I'll see you next time.
Welcome to the space where cycles breathe, where the real raw life of a mama leads, from motherhood's highs to charting the low. Your body's story is the star of the show. Matriarch hearts, cycles that speak, charting the truth in every peak. This is the cyclical doula sound, where body wisdom is always found. Matriarch hearts, cycles that speak, charting the truth in every peak. This is the cyclical doula sound, where body wisdom is always found.
Just a disclaimer and a reminder that any guests on the show are views of their own and not necessarily views of Emma LLC or Emma Goff herself. Thanks so much.